Now, every time I engage here, I either want to be destroying sentries or destroying Colossus, because he's not going to have the gas to produce both.
Right.
And so you'll realize as I keep engaging here and he keeps losing sentries, every time we re-engage, it becomes more and more efficient for me. Just because he can't use those force fields.
Burrowing right outside of his natural. That's pretty brave. Did you actually pick off an observer, or was that just...
Yeah, I picked off an observer early on. I know he's not going to cut any sort of Colossus production at this point. Way too many drones here.
Maintaining a max, playing the positional game right now.
Yep.
I hear
Trying
Blink's
to
pretty
fall
good.
back my reinforcements. Yeah. Go ahead and start my Greater Spire.
I was just about to ask about that. It looks at this point like he's almost cranking pure gateway units. What are you thinking as you see this?
I'm not making any more Corruptors, and I'm just kind of falling back, waiting for my Greater Spire to kick in so I can do yet another timing attack on him.
Now, how often during all of this are you checking the saturation at your bases?
Pretty often. I just, caught my my main was a little oversaturated. Obviously, had no minerals, but I'd say every time I go to spawn Marva, because I spawn Marva manually, unlike most people, so I constantly am, getting a good look at my base saturation.
So you backed up almost immediately there. What did you see that cued the retreat?
Force field. I don't want to be caught in these pathways, those force fields. And Greater Spire is done here.
Spore crawlers is an interesting choice.
Yeah, just to free up that supply.
Is it because they're cheaper?
Yep.
And then canceling them. Oh, that's even cuter. A true 300 supply army, or at least 210.
Yep. At this point, I kind of want to be worried about some sort of DT harass, so I'm going to go ahead and get 2 spine crawlers and a spore at each of my bases. Now that I have Broodlord tech, I can kind of feel safe to go ahead and grab this high yield in the middle. I'm going to go ahead and make my Baneling nest, and just for Baneling drops, now that my drop research has been completed.
Baneling drops, that sounds like fun.
Oh, it is. I find it extremely necessary late game against Protoss.
I hope we get to see a couple of those this game.
Go ahead and heal up for a second.
Now, we got a second of downtime, it looks like. So you said, now that I have Broodlords, I can take this high yield. What's your logic there? Why would you take
it's
it
really
sooner?
hard to you can't really control both pathways without Broodlords, I find, like both pathways on this map especially. But once I have Broodlord tech, they have such good range, and they can put me in good enough unit position to where I can just go ahead and secure that base and defend it properly with the Broodlords. And that's the Void Ray transition.
Finally, we're going to get some Stargate tech in here. So you see the Void Ray transition. Obviously, that's because you're on broods and
Yep.
making mostly roaches. But immediately, you have to respond to this. So what is it going to be?
I'm making as many Corruptors as I pretty much can right now.
Corruptors,
And
not Hydras.
Nope. Yeah, just because with the Colossus in there as well, it just makes it extremely inefficient to go Hydraless.
So this is going to put us back into that same situation we were talking about so long ago, it seems, when you said when you see Void Ray Colossus, you want to overkill it with Corruptors.
Yep.
And here come the Banelings.
Yep. I need to do some sort of drop on his 4th base. I can't let him get 4 fully saturated bases, or it just becomes too hard to deal with at this point in the game.
So that's interesting. The banelings aren't actually for his army; they're for economy harass.
Yep.
This is a situation that all Zerg players know far too well.
Yep. It's not looking too good for me here.
Yeah.
Yep, and once I lose my third and fourth like that, it's not, or fourth and fifth rather, it's not really a whole lot I can do to come back from this. I did my Baneling drops, I dealt a decent amount of economic damage, but he's just going to be able to transfer from his third, and he should be fine after this. Meanwhile, I don't really have any sort of mining from my third and fourth, so not really much I can do over here.
Sure.
Yep. I think I needed to kind of sit back and amass more Broodlords and get my Corruptor count up a bit higher instead of like continually being aggressive, and just use my Banelings to harass. And then I could have gone ahead, once I kind of secured my economy at the fourth and fifth and taken control of the high yield, and then I would have been able to go ahead and and then start being aggressive once I had amassed a good 5 Broodlords or so. I think I was maybe a little bit over aggressive when I attacked with pure Broodlord as well on that fourth. He reacted properly. He was able to add in some Void Rays there, and obviously with no anti-air there wasn't really a whole lot I can do. So I maybe got a little too hasty, smelled blood, and wanted to try and go ahead and end that fourth while I could, and it ended up costing me the game.
Okay, all right. So let's talk. I mean, those things all add up, and they create this huge storm of QQ and bad times. But when it comes to that army that Toss had there at the end of the game, he was closing in on a max. He had all the stuff that we Zerg players hate to see. Eventually, no matter what, we're going to have to engage that. So I mean, what if we could go back and have the ideal army composition for it, what would that army composition be?
Broodlord, Corruptor, Hydra. So just not many Broodlords, 7 at most. A really decent amount of Corruptors, once again, like possibly 20, 30, somewhere around there, and then Hydralisk. But Hydralisk is something you kind of have to add in later as you secure the Vespene Geysers at your fifth, I'd say, just because you won't quite have the resources for it off of 4 bases.
Okay, cool. All right, so if you would like to run one more against him, I'm totally cool with that. I understand the desire to regame sometimes. So let's get sweet revenge, and then we'll jump in, and I'll hop up there in the driver's seat and let you yell at me for all the things that I do wrong.
All right, sounds good to me.
All right. And that switch, that Void Ray switch, the second you saw it, you said, I was waiting for this.
Yeah.
Is there any way that we can kind of prepare for it beyond what we did?
I guess don't get too overly aggressive with pure Broodlords. Like if I had kept a good 4 or 5 corruptors with that army that engaged it as 4th, I think I would have been fine. But you can't get overconfident and push in without any sort of without at least scouting first.
Yeah.
Like I really didn't make any sort of an effort to scout that army. I just kind of saw Stalker Colossus and reacted, which gets me in trouble sometimes, I guess.
Yeah, well, it happens. I guess that's the risk you take. Just as a Zerg player, because so often we get in these positions where we mass up with this big army and just nothing can shoot up, and we have to do something. We can't just sit there and be passive.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, the pressure itself wasn't bad. Just needed to keep a little bit better of a composition in anticipation for that switch. And it's not like the Corruptors would have been useless. He still had Colossus with his forces as well. So, just make sure you don't get too Broodlord heavy.
Now, at one point in that game, I heard you say, "Ooh, that's too many drones."
Just in my main, yeah.
Okay.
That was the point in which I had transferred. What was my drone count there at late game?
At the peak, you had 77, and then after you transitioned your broods, I guess after you made all the spines and the spores in each base, you dropped down to 64.
Yeah, I think I need a bit more than that. You want to stay between, I'd guess somewhere around 75, 80 or so.
Really?
Yeah. You definitely need like a good amount of income against Protoss late game. Like if you notice there, I was actually starved at the end. I couldn't reinforce after that last attack, and I definitely should have been able to.
That's something I guess we could talk a little bit about in this lull we have. Sometimes we get in these positions against Protoss, especially where we want to free up supply for Broodlords. But and there's different ways to go about it. But what's kind of becoming popularized is, hey, let's make 10, 12 spine crawlers, and then use that supply for broods. You kind of basically you said there that if you do that, you're going to be hindering your economy too much, and you're going to be taken away from your ability to do that Zerg reload that we like to do so much.
Yeah.
Is there a time when it's okay to do that, and a time when it's not?
I mean, obviously, if you've accumulated a good amount of resources, being like, I don't know, 4 or 5K, it's alright to just go ahead, don't reinforce or don't remake those drones just because, once you're getting on like 5 or 6 base anyway, your being a natural would be mined out soon thereafter, and you wouldn't have to, you wouldn't need more than enough drones to saturate 3 bases or so. But generally, that's going to be much, much later in the game. Like, you still want to have a good 80 drones, or 75, 80 drones at least, until, your main and natural, and then maybe even your third are mined out.
That's so many. That's more than I've been gunning for. Like, I try to stop around 65, 70. And how much of a difference does it make, those 10, 15 drones?
Oh, it makes tons of... a huge difference. It's the the difference between being able to reinforce once and being able to reinforce a good 10 armies in the span of just a few minutes.
This is one of those balances that we just all struggle to understand and struggle to maintain.
Yep.
Maybe 12 years from now, somebody will figure it out. Will people even be playing this game in 12 years? I don't know.
StarCraft 3.
Yeah, there you go.
Alright. Just going ahead here, doing my typical timing. I don't see any early stalkers, which is got me questioning, especially because he knows he delayed my expansion. He could have easily exploited, possibly done some damage. Alright, I see a sentry, which once again is like leading me to believe he's doing some sort of expansion build. But I'm going to go ahead and scout it out anyway.
You gotta be sure.
Yep.
Those crafty players will trick you like that.
And, yep, see the expansion? It's going to let me just know I can go ahead and just keep droning at this point.
There's the train.
You have a train by your house?